Hello there, and thank you very much for joining us in this new Azure Portal how-to video. Today, we'll learn how to configure virtual machines behind the load balancer, and for that we have Alison Dodds, who is going to show us how to do that. So thank you very much for joining us, Alison.
Thanks, Leon. So I thought we would go through a simple configuration, setting up a load balancer, and putting some virtual machines in its backend pool. So I've already created those virtual machines, and I've opened port 80 on them to accept inbound traffic. And you can do that yourself while you're creating the VM, or you can come back to a VM you've already created and edit those network configuration settings there. So we're going to jump straight into creating a load balancer. So I'm here on the load balancer create page. I'm going to give it a name and all the usual details. I'm going to put it, I'm going to put it in the region where my VMs are in, which is West US 2. And then I'm going to pick a type and a SKU. So because we want an internet-facing load balancer, I'm going to go ahead and pick this public type. But if you wanted to load balance private traffic, like for instance within a virtual network, you'd want an internal load balancer. We also have two SKUs in load balancer, basic and standard. So standard is the more recent of these, and it has some capabilities that aren't available in basic. So we're going to go ahead and create a standard load balancer. I also need to define a front-end configuration for the load balancer, which is a public IP address in this case. So I'm just going to give it a name. And then I'm going to figure out which availability zone I want it behind. And it's not important to me which one it is, so I'm just going to go with zone redundant so that it supports all zones. I'm going to click Review and Create, and it's going to validate that all my information was properly formatted. I can check out this summary, make sure it looks good, and then I can go ahead and click Create. So it'll take me to the standard deployment tracking page where I can watch my deployment and make sure everything looks good.
And so far, this creation is very similar to the other ones that we saw in other videos, like storage, virtual machine, etc., right?
Exactly. We're trying to keep it as consistent as possible.
You provided a little bit of data, just the name and a little bit of the options, and that's all it took, right?
Yep. There's a little bit more configuration that we want to do to get this working end-to-end, though. So I'm going to go to the load balancer that was created. And here on the left-hand menu, we can see some of the load balancing components. So this front-end IP configuration we've already created. You can see this here, and you can add more if you'd like. We also need to add a backend pool for the VMs to be in, a health probe, and a load balancing rule to stitch those all together. And it sounds like a lot, but it's actually pretty straightforward. So I'm going to go through those in order. I'm going to go to backend pools and click Add, and just give this backend pool a name. So I'm going to select the virtual network that my VMs are in, and then pick each one of the virtual machines and specify its IP configuration. So I want to load balance between these two virtual machines, and I'm going to go ahead and click Add to create the backend pool. Next, I'm going to add a health probe, and what the health probe is going to do is it's going to look at that backend pool and see whether the VMs are up and running so that we're only load balancing to healthy instances. So I'm going to click Add here, name the probe, and then here you can define the protocol and port. We're going to use TCP/80, but you could also use HTTP or HTTPS. And then some of the probing behavior is also here. Go ahead and click OK, accept those defaults. And then finally, like I said, we're going to stitch everything together. We're going to take a load balancing rule and connect the front end to the back end using that probe that we created. So I'll go and click Add, name this load balancing rule, TCP/80 rule. And then because we only have one of each of those components, the front end, the back end, and the probe, those are already filled in for me by default here. Other than that, we have a little bit of kind of load balancing configuration that I can do here. But I'm going to accept those defaults and just click OK. Create that rule. So at this point, when the rule creates, we have kind of our basic setup for the load balancer, and we can access those virtual machines as long as we configured them correctly. And then I can come back to this load balancer page, do some more configuration, add more rules, add more front ends, make this more robust if I want to do that. But this is good for now.
Thank you very much, Alison.
Thank you, Leon.
And thanks every one of you for watching. Please leave us a comment in the comment section, follow us on Twitter, and look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you very much.